Hey there, Internet. So real quick on a note completely distinct from the rest of the video, I currently have my internet browser open on my computer right over there, and there's an ad on dictionary.com informing me that I can watch Liam Hemsworth in The Hunger Games Catching Fire, get it on Google Play. Which seems like an oddly specific ad, and also an oddly ill-fitting ad, not only because I don't love The Hunger Games in general, but also because why on earth would it think that I would be interested in specifically Liam Hemsworth? Because I promise you, I don't think I've ever Googled his name. Okay, that might be a lie. I did really like the last song, so I might have looked him up to see who he was, but that's irrelevant. Anyway, on to the actual point of today's video. I am currently reading through The Three Musketeers. This video is not sponsored by Barnes & Noble, by the way. It just happens to be the version that I bought at Half Price Books, who is also not a sponsor. First of all, I absolutely love this book. I honestly don't know why I've never read it before in my life, but it's amazing, and I'm only a little bit of the ways into it, but seriously, it's so good. If you haven't read it, what's wrong with you? Go read it, like right now. Unless you're like at work or doing something else important, in which case it could probably wait until at least this evening. Also, I don't know that I can say what's wrong with you when I just admitted that I'd never read this book before in my life. Second of all, the other day at lunch while my nieces were over at my house, I had the book sitting on the kitchen island right next to me while I was eating, and my 9-year-old niece looked at it and said, "Holy cow, that is a huge book. What is that?" And I was like, that is a book called The Three Musketeers, and I in some way incorporated the use of the word classic, as in it is a classic piece of literature. My niece, who, side note, is also part of a homeschool group called Classical Conversations, then asked me a question. She said, "Johnny, what does classic mean?" And I looked at her and I thought a little bit and I said, I honestly don't know how to... That was a very loud update notification on my computer. Anyway, I tried to describe it and I was kind of like, you know, it's a book or a song or a piece of art or something that is like kind of old, but people really like it and it's considered to be a good example of what the thing, whatever medium it should be. And I realized deep in my brain hole that I didn't really have any idea what the word classical actually meant. Aside from the fact that it also referred to like Greek and Roman culture and classical education, and that's where that came from and all of that kind of stuff. So I googled it and I found out that classic comes from the Latin classicus, which literally means of the highest class and was just used by the Romans to describe things that were really great and high class and all of that kind of stuff. So that pretty much covers what the word classic means as far as education goes. And I think in some cases that also applies to like classic literature. You could honestly say that the Iliad and the Odyssey, for example, are classical because they're from Greek and Latin culture. But the problem with that is that there are a ton of books that we now consider to be classics that originally weren't really that high class. I mean, The Three Musketeers is a perfect example. I was reading the introduction and basically this was pulp fiction written in a periodical that was highly sensationalized and largely historically inaccurate and just kind of bleh. So obviously of the highest class couldn't really be used to describe that, nor could pertaining to Greek or Latin culture because it's a novel set in France. So that set my brain to thinking, and at that point I realized that The Three Musketeers was written during the 17th century in Europe. All y'all history/philosophy people may realize that this would be a part of the neoclassical period, i.e. a time where Europeans especially really tried to get back to what made Greek and Latin culture so great. And while some people succeeded more than others, in general that kind of mentality permeated the time, and so perhaps we nowadays use the word classic to refer not to true classic but to neoclassical works. And honestly, as far as most literature goes, I think that understanding of the word classic does pretty much hold up, at least with old works. Because if you think about the authors and the pieces of literature that we consider to be classics, basically everything that was on your reading list in high school literature class, a lot of them were written in this period. But see, there's still a problem, and that is the fact that a lot of people nowadays just use classic to describe things that they like. Like, oh man, that movie was a classic. Or did you hear his response to that? What a classic. And unless far more things find their roots in 17th and 18th century European culture than I think they do, my definition has fallen short. And of course, there is an even broader definition of classic that kind of extrapolates on the idea of following Greek and Latin standards, wherein classic just means following the standards for whatever thing is being described. Hence the fact that you can have a movie come out and people will instantly call it a classic because it, I don't know, fits the mold. Or you can have classic rock that kind of defined the way rock was supposed to sound. And I could go on and on and on with more examples, but the problem I have with this is that it completely eliminates the possibility that a classic could even break the rules by definition. And when I think about so many great pieces of art throughout history that really truly should be considered classics, be they films like Citizen Kane or any of the works of literature that you could like wrap your head around, or great compositions of music, or to use the example I already mentioned, rock as a genre, they thrive on breaking rules. The reason they are considered so great today is that they punched through all the bounds of what people considered possible and changed their respective mediums in mind-blowing ways. So perhaps a classic should be something that sets the standard, not something that follows the standard. And if so, which I think may be the case, we need to stop calling so many things classics. We need to be more willing to say that, oh, that was just okay. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything great. And at the same time, more willing to push ourselves and push others to truly explore how we can define the new classic. Because, moment of honesty, if there is one thing that I can say that I feel more strongly than anything else about the world right now, it's that it has kind of stagnated. At least on a creative level, we just keep seeing rehashes of the same thing over and over again, and I'm trying to think of the last time I saw something that truly made me go, that is new and different, and I want to see more things like that in the future that expand the world and the thoughts and all the other things. And this is the point where my eloquence breaks down and I realize I should probably be ending the video. So those are my thoughts, very long-winded, but it's just kind of been bubbling around in my brain hole. Let me know down in the commente section, what is your favorite composition of any kind, be it literature or art or music or film or whatever. Because if I need one thing in this world, it's to add to the list of things that I want to read and watch and blah blah blah. Also, that was sarcasm in case you didn't catch it. Until next week, deuces.